6 Marines hit the ground in under 4 minutes. The smallest recruit in the platoon stood over them, not even breathing hard. Every man in that gymnasium had laughed at her just hours before. Now they couldn't even look her in the eye. This is the true story of Maya Chen, a 20-year-old woman from the deadliest streets of Chicago who walked into Marine Corps training and rewrote everything they thought they knew about strength size and what it really means to be a warrior. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel and watch this story until the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. Let's see how far Maya's story travels tonight. Maya Chen heard the laughter before she even stepped off the bus. "You gotta be kidding me," someone muttered from behind her. "They're letting middle schoolers join now." She didn't turn around. She had heard worse. Much worse. Growing up on the south side of Chicago taught you to ignore words that were designed to cut. Words only hurt if you let them. And Maya Chen had stopped letting words hurt her a long time ago. The Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego stretched out before her like a concrete maze. Buildings arranged in perfect military precision. Everything painted the same shade of institutional beige, flags snapping in the ocean breeze, and everywhere she looked recruits who towered over her by a foot or more. At 5 feet 2 inches and 115 pounds, Maya looked like she had wandered onto the wrong campus. Her black hair was pulled back tight against her skull. Her uniform hung loose on her small frame, despite being the smallest size available. When she picked up her gear bag, it looked almost comically large against her body. "Move it, recruit!" a drill instructor shouted from somewhere to her left. "This isn't a vacation." Maya moved. She had been moving her entire life, running from danger, running toward opportunity, running because standing still meant dying in the neighborhood where she grew up. The processing center was chaos. Hundreds of recruits being sorted, documented, assigned. Maya waited in line behind a massive man who had to be at least 6'5". He glanced back at her and did a visible double take. "You lost, sweetheart?" he asked. His Texas drawl stretched the words into something that sounded almost friendly, but wasn't. "No," Maya said simply. "You sure? Because the Girl Scout recruiting office is probably down the street somewhere." The men around him laughed. Maya kept her expression neutral. She had already cataloged everything about this man without appearing to look at him. The way he shifted his weight favored his right leg. His hands were large but soft, probably never thrown a real punch in his life. His shoulders were developed, but his core was weak. Too much bench press, not enough actual fighting. "I'm Marcus Reed," he continued, apparently bothered by her lack of reaction. "Played linebacker for Texas A&M. What's your story, little girl?" "Maya Chen, Chicago." "Chicago?" Another recruit pushed into the conversation. He was shorter than Reed, but built like a fire hydrant. "What part? South Side." The laughter stopped. Anyone who knew anything about American cities knew what the South Side of Chicago meant. It meant survival wasn't guaranteed. It meant you learned to fight before you learned to read. It meant funerals for teenagers were as common as birthday parties. "Tough neighborhood," the shorter recruit said carefully. His name was Torres Maya, would learn later. A wrestler from Arizona. "Still, this is the Marines. Not the same thing as street fighting." "I didn't say anything about street fighting," Maya replied. Before Torres could respond, a drill instructor materialized beside them. Staff Sergeant Kim, the nameplate read. A Korean-American woman with a face that looked like it had never smiled in its entire life. "You three want to keep chatting like you're at a coffee shop?" Kim's voice could have cut through steel. "Or do you want to actually become Marines?" "Ma'am, yes ma'am," the three of them responded in unison. Kim's eyes lingered on Maya for just a moment longer than necessary. Something flickered in her expression. Recognition, maybe, or curiosity. Then it was gone. "Move," Kim ordered. "Now." They moved. The barracks were designed to strip away individuality. Rows of identical bunks, identical footlockers, identical everything. Maya was assigned to a bunk near the back corner next to a woman named Jackson, who stood nearly a foot taller than her. "I'm Denise," the tall woman said. "From Georgia." "Maya, Chicago." "Chicago? No kidding. My cousin lives there, Rogers Park area." "Nice neighborhood." "Nicer than where you're from, I'm guessing." Maya allowed herself a small smile. "Probably." That first night, Maya lay in her bunk and listened to the sounds of the barracks settling. 47 recruits breathing, shifting, whispering. Some of them were crying quietly, already overwhelmed by the transition from civilian life. Others were snoring, apparently unbothered by anything. Maya didn't sleep. She rarely did on the first night in a new place. Instead, she let her mind drift back to Chicago. To the apartment she had shared with her grandmother until 3 months ago. To the woman who had raised her since she was 8 years old. Her parents had been killed in a gang shooting. Wrong place, wrong time. Collateral damage in a war nobody had officially declared, but everyone was fighting. Maya had been at school when it happened. She came home to police tape and flashing lights, and neighbors who couldn't meet her eyes. Her grandmother Lynn had arrived from Vietnam 2 days later, a woman in her 60s who barely spoke English, but who moved like water flowing over rocks. Smooth, controlled, unstoppable. "You will not die like your parents," Lynn had told Maya that first week. Her English was broken, but her meaning was crystal clear. "I teach you to survive." And she had. Lynn had grown up in Vietnam during the war. She had learned to fight from her own grandmother, who had learned from her grandmother before that. Generations of Vietnamese women passing down techniques designed to help the small defeat the large, the weak overcome the strong. Maya started training the day after her parents' funeral. She was 8 years old. By 12, she could dislocate a grown man's shoulder in under 3 seconds. By 15, she had added Taekwondo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to her grandmother's traditional techniques. By 17, she was fighting in underground circuits to help pay her grandmother's mounting medical bills. The diabetes had come first, then the kidney problems, then the heart condition. Medical bill after medical bill. Maya fought and won and collected cash in parking lots behind abandoned warehouses. She never lost. Not once. Her grandmother had died 3 months before Maya shipped out for basic training. Peacefully in her sleep, with Maya holding her hand. "You go be a warrior now," Lynn had whispered in her final days. "Show them what a small woman can do." Maya intended to do exactly that. But not yet. Not until the moment was right. The first week of training was designed to break recruits down. Physical exhaustion, mental pressure, constant evaluation. Maya watched as 3 recruits quit before Wednesday, and 2 more were sent home for medical reasons by Friday. Senior drill instructor Gunnery Sergeant Davis ran their platoon like a man who had seen too much combat and had 0 patience for weakness. He was a mountain of a man, 6'4", with scars running across his forearms, and a voice that could be heard across the entire depot. "Martinez," he shouted during the first morning formation. "Are you supposed to be here, or did you get lost on the way to elementary school?" "Sir, my name is Chen, sir," Maya responded. Davis walked closer, looking down at her like she was an insect he was considering stepping on. "Did I ask for a correction, recruit? Sir, no, sir. Then shut your mouth and let me finish insulting you." Someone behind her laughed. Maya kept her eyes forward. "You're 5'0", Davis continued. "You weigh about as much as my left leg. The obstacle course has walls taller than you. What exactly do you think you're going to contribute to my Marine Corps?" "Sir, this recruit will complete all required training and graduate as a Marine, sir." Davis leaned in closer. "Will you now—" "Sir, yes, sir." "We'll see about that, Chen. We'll see about that." He moved on to the next recruit, but Maya could feel eyes on her from every direction. She had been marked, singled out, made an example of what failure looked like before she had even been given a chance to fail. Good, she thought. Let them underestimate me. The obstacle course was Maya's first public struggle. The walls were indeed designed for people much taller than her. Where other recruits could reach up and grab the top edge, Maya had to jump catch and pull herself up with pure upper body strength. "Come on, Pixie!" Corporal Bradley shouted from the sideline. He was the assistant drill instructor, a man who seemed to take personal pleasure in the suffering of others. "My grandmother could climb faster than that," Maya struggled, deliberately. She let her arms shake. She let her grip slip. She made it look like she was barely holding on. "Pathetic," Bradley continued. "Absolutely pathetic." The other recruits were watching. Reed was grinning. Torres shook his head like he was watching something sad. Jackson, the tall woman from Georgia, looked away embarrassed on Maya's behalf. Maya made it over the wall eventually, dead last in her group, covered in dirt and appearing exhausted. "You just cost your entire platoon 20 extra push-ups," Bradley announced. "Everyone thank Recruit Chen for her outstanding performance." "Thank you, Recruit Chen," the platoon shouted in unison, their voices dripping with resentment. That night, Torres approached Maya in the mess hall. "Hey, look, no offense, but maybe this isn't the place for you." Maya looked up from her food. "What do you mean?" "I mean the Marines need people who can keep up. You're dragging everyone else down." "I made it over the wall." "Barely. And how many extra exercises did we have to do because of you?" Maya said nothing. "I'm just saying." Torres continued. "There's no shame in knowing your limits. Maybe you should talk to someone about a voluntary separation. Before you get hurt, or get someone else hurt." He walked away before Maya could respond. Not that she was going to respond. She had learned long ago that actions spoke louder than words, and her time for action was coming. Matukan. The nickname Pixie spread through the platoon like wildfire. Within days, everyone was using it, even some of the drill instructors. "Pixie, pick up the pace. Pixie, stop dragging your feet. Pixie, if you fall behind one more time, the whole platoon is running an extra mile." Maya endured. She had endured worse. Much worse. The streets of Chicago didn't care about your feelings. Neither did the men who came to the underground fights looking for easy marks. They had underestimated her too. Most of them had ended up unconscious on concrete floors, wondering what had happened. During hand-to-hand combat training, Maya was consistently paired with smaller opponents. The instructors seemed to be protecting her, giving her matches they thought she could handle. "Chen, you're with Rodriguez today," Corporal Bradley announced during their second week of martial arts training. Rodriguez was one of the smaller male recruits, maybe 5'8" and 160 pounds. Still significantly larger than Maya, but not the giants she would eventually face. "Go easy on her," Bradley added with a smirk. "We don't want to break our little Pixie." Rodriguez nodded and took a fighting stance. He threw a slow jab, obviously pulling his punch. Maya blocked it adequately, but not impressively. She countered with a predictable combination that Rodriguez easily avoided. The match ended with Rodriguez winning on points. He patted Maya on the shoulder afterward, like she was a pet who had performed a mediocre trick. "Good effort," he said. Maya nodded and returned to formation. Inside, she was cataloging every detail. Rodriguez dropped his left hand after throwing combinations. He shifted his weight backward when expecting a counterattack. His footwork was sloppy, and his balance was easily disrupted. If she had wanted to, Maya could have ended that fight in under 5 seconds. But she didn't want to. Not yet. Staff Sergeant Kim pulled Maya aside after the 3rd week of training. They were alone in a corridor between buildings away from the eyes and ears of other recruits. "Chen," Kim said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "I've been watching you." Maya kept her expression neutral. "Ma'am, during the drills today, when Rodriguez threw that combination, you slipped it perfectly. Textbook head movement. But then you pretended to struggle with a basic block that any beginner should be able to handle." Maya said nothing. "I've been doing this for 12 years, Kim continued. "I've seen a lot of recruits come through here. Some of them are exactly what they appear to be. Some of them are hiding things, weaknesses they don't want anyone to see." She stepped closer to Maya. "And some of them are hiding strength, waiting for the right moment to show what they can really do." "Ma'am, I'm not sure what you mean," Maya said carefully. "I think you know exactly what I mean." Kim held Maya's gaze for a long moment. "Whatever you're planning, whatever you're waiting for, be careful. The men in this platoon, they don't like being surprised, and they really don't like being embarrassed." "I'll keep that in mind, ma'am." Kim nodded slowly. "See that you do." Dismissed. Maya walked back to the barracks with her mind racing. Kim had seen through her act. That was dangerous, but it was also potentially useful. Having an ally among the training staff, even an unofficial one, could make a significant difference when her moment finally came. The harassment intensified during the 4th week. It started small insults whispered just loud enough for Maya to hear accidents during training that left her with bruises gear that mysteriously went missing from her footlocker. "Looks like someone misplaced your canteen," Bradley announced during a water break, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Guess you'll have to go thirsty until we get back to barracks." "Maybe Pixie's too small to keep track of her own stuff," Reed added. The other recruits laughed. Maya said nothing. She had survived much worse than petty theft and cruel words. In Chicago, the gangster disciples had once decided to make an example of the little Vietnamese girl who kept winning fights in their territory. 3 of them had jumped her in an alley behind a laundromat. She had put all 3 in the hospital and walked home with nothing but scraped knuckles. These Marines with their childish pranks and obvious insecurities were nothing compared to that. But the psychological pressure was taking a toll on some of the other recruits. Jackson, the tall woman from Georgia, who had been friendly on that first night, started avoiding Maya entirely. Being associated with the platoon's weakest link wasn't good for anyone's reputation. "I'm sorry," Jackson whispered one night when they happened to be alone in the bathroom. "It's just if I'm seen hanging out with you, they start targeting me too." "I understand," Maya said. "Do you? Because I feel terrible about it." "You're doing what you need to survive. I respect that." Jackson looked at her strangely. "You're different than I thought you'd be." "What did you think I'd be? I don't know. Weaker, I guess. More broken by all this. But you're just taking it. Like it doesn't even affect you." Maya met her eyes. "It affects me. I just don't let it show." "How? How do you do that?" "Practice. A lot of practice." Jackson seemed like she wanted to ask more, but footsteps in the hallway sent her scurrying back to her bunk. Maya stayed behind, staring at her reflection in the mirror above the sink. The face looking back at her was calm, composed, revealing nothing. Her grandmother had taught her that too. How to wear a mask that showed the world only what you wanted it to see. How to hide pain, fear, and anger behind a wall of perfect stillness. "Your enemies will tell you who they are," Lynn had said during one of their countless training sessions. They will brag about their strength. They will mock your weakness. Let them. Learn everything about them while they learn nothing about you. Then when the moment comes, you will destroy them before they even understand what is happening. Maya smiled at her reflection, a small, cold smile that disappeared as quickly as it appeared. The moment was coming. She could feel it. The announcement came during morning formation at the beginning of week 5. Listen up! Gunnery Sergeant Davis's voice boomed across the parade ground. Next week, you will begin formal evaluation for the Marine Corps Martial Arts program. You will demonstrate techniques individually, and then you will participate in full-contact sparring matches against randomly selected opponents. A murmur went through the platoon. Everyone knew what this meant. The informal hierarchy that had developed over the past weeks was about to be tested in the most direct way possible. These matches will be observed and scored by training staff, Davis continued. Your performance will affect your final rankings and your eligibility for advanced training programs. Do not embarrass yourselves. Do not embarrass this platoon. Dismissed. As the formation broke up, Reed immediately started talking loudly to anyone who would listen. Finally, he said, cracking his knuckles dramatically. Time to show what real fighting looks like. I've been holding back in these practice sessions, but next week gloves are off. You actually know how to fight? Torres asked. Know how to fight, brother? I've been in more bar fights than you've had hot meals. Texas doesn't raise soft men. Bar fights are different than trained combat. Fighting is fighting. You hit the other guy harder than he hits you, you win. Simple as that. Maya listened to the conversation from nearby, pretending to adjust her gear. Reed's confidence was impressive, but his understanding of combat was laughably simplistic. Size and strength mattered, but they weren't everything. Sometimes they weren't even the most important thing. She thought about the men she had fought in Chicago. Some of them had been as big as Reed, bigger even. Gang enforcers, bouncers, men who had built their entire identities around physical intimidation. They had all fallen the same way, confused and beaten, wondering how a small Vietnamese girl had taken them apart so completely. That night, Maya did something she hadn't done since arriving at San Diego. She trained. The bathroom was empty at 3 a.m. Maya locked the door and began moving through the forms her grandmother had taught her. Slowly at first, then faster. Her hands cut through the air with precision that would have shocked anyone who had watched her struggle during official training sessions. She practiced strikes, blocks, throws, submission holds, pressure point attacks. Each movement flowed into the next like water cascading over rocks. Smooth, inevitable, unstoppable. For an hour, Maya danced with shadows. She fought imaginary opponents who attacked with the same patterns she had observed in Reed Torres and the other large recruits. She practiced counters, exploited weaknesses, turned strength into vulnerability. When she finally stopped, her breath was steady and her heart rate barely elevated. She looked at herself in the mirror again. Same calm face, same composed expression, same mask hiding everything that mattered. One more week of being underestimated, one more week of insults and pranks and casual cruelty, and then she would show them all what a warrior from the south side of Chicago was really capable of. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. The bamboo bends in the storm and survives. The oak stands rigid and breaks. Maya had been bending for 5 weeks. Next week, she would show them the storm. The days leading up into the evaluation passed with agonizing slowness. Maya continued her performance as the struggling recruit. She finished last in runs. She barely completed the obstacle course. She lost every practice match by narrow margins that made her appear to be trying her best without ever actually succeeding. Reed's betting pool grew larger. The current odds had Maya lasting less than 30 seconds against any of the top male recruits. Some people were betting she would forfeit rather than face the humiliation of a public defeat. "Hey, Pixie," Reed called out one evening in the mess hall. "I heard they might pair you with me next week. You want to just tap out now and save yourself the hospital visit?" The recruits around him laughed. "I'll take my chances," Maya said quietly. "What was that? Couldn't hear you over how small you are." More laughter. Maya returned to her food, ignoring them completely. But she had heard, and she had added another item to the mental list of things Reed would regret saying. The night before the evaluation, Maya wrote a letter. It was addressed to no one, intended only for herself, a record of everything she was feeling in this moment before everything changed. "Tomorrow they will learn who I really am. Not the pixie they created in their minds. Not the weak link they blamed for their extra exercises. Not the small girl who should have gone home weeks ago. They will learn that I am the granddaughter of Lin Chen, who survived a war and crossed an ocean and raised a warrior when no one else could. They will learn that I am the product of the South Side, where children grow up fast or they don't grow up at all. They will learn that size is just a number and strength is just an illusion, and the only thing that really matters in a fight is the willingness to do whatever it takes to win. Tomorrow they will stop laughing." She folded the letter and placed it under her pillow. Then she closed her eyes and slept more peacefully than she had since arriving at San Diego. Tomorrow, everything would change. Maya woke before dawn on evaluation day. She lay in her bunk listening to the sounds of other recruits starting to stir. Someone was muttering prayers in Spanish. Someone else was doing nervous push-ups beside their bed. She thought about her grandmother, about the thousands of hours they had spent together training and talking and preparing for moments exactly like this one. "You will face many opponents in your life," Lin had told her. "Some will be bigger than you, stronger than you, more experienced than you. None of that matters. What matters is this: when the moment comes, will you have the courage to show them who you really are?" Maya sat up in her bunk. She looked around at the recruits who had tormented her, dismissed her, and written her off as a failure. Today she would answer her grandmother's question. Today she would have the courage. And by the time the sun set on this evaluation day, every single person in that platoon would know exactly what they had been wrong about from the very beginning. The gymnasium doors opened at exactly 0600 hours. Maya walked in with the rest of her platoon, her heart beating steady and slow, while everyone around her vibrated with nervous energy. The mats were already laid out. The training staff sat at tables along one wall with clipboards and evaluation forms. Everything was arranged for judgment. "Find your spots and sit down," Gunnery Sergeant Davis commanded. "When I call your name, you come to center mat. You demonstrate what we've taught you. Then you fight whoever I pair you with. Questions?" Nobody spoke. "Good. Let's begin." Maya settled into her position near the back of the formation. From here she could see everyone. Reed was stretching dramatically, rolling his massive shoulders and cracking his neck. Torres bounced on his toes, shadowboxing against invisible opponents. Jackson, the tall woman from Georgia, sat with her hands clasped tight, probably praying this would be over quickly. The individual demonstrations started. One by one, recruits were called forward to show basic strikes blocks and defensive movements. Most performed adequately. Some were impressive. A few struggled with techniques they should have mastered weeks ago. "Chen," Davis called out eventually. Maya rose and walked to center mat, She could feel eyes on her from every direction, some curious, some amused, some already dismissing her before she had thrown a single technique. "Basic striking combination," Davis instructed. "Go." Maya threw the combination. Jab, cross hook, uppercut. Her technique was clean but unremarkable. She held back just enough to look competent without revealing anything special. "Acceptable," Davis noted, making a mark on his clipboard. "Return to formation." As Maya walked back to her spot, she caught Reed whispering something to Torres. Both of them laughed quietly. She didn't need to hear the words to know what they were saying. The demonstrations continued for another hour. Then Davis stood up and made the announcement everyone had been waiting for. "Sparring begins now. Full contact. Controlled aggression. I see anyone trying to actually hurt their opponent. You're done. Understood?" "Sir, yes, sir. First match." Davis looked at his clipboard. "Reed versus Patterson." Reed practically bounded to the mat. Patterson was a medium-sized recruit from Ohio who had been performing well in training but was nowhere near Reed's size. The match lasted about 90 seconds. Reed overwhelmed him with aggressive rushing attacks, using his weight advantage to push Patterson around the mat until a heavy overhand right ended the fight. "Winner Reed," Corporal Bradley announced. Reed raised his arms in triumph, playing to the watching recruits like a professional wrestler. "Who's next?" he shouted. "Come on, give me a real challenge." "Save it for the mat, Reed," Davis said flatly. "Torres, you're up against Williams." Torres won his match too, using wrestling takedowns to control his opponent on the ground. Williams, another large recruit, defeated his opponent with powerful boxing combinations. Match after match went exactly as expected. The big recruits dominated. The smaller ones survived or lost. Maya watched everything. She noted how Reed dropped his guard when he rushed forward. She observed Torres's habit of committing too much weight to his takedowns. She saw Williams telegraph his right hand by shifting his shoulder a half-second before throwing. Every weakness, every pattern, every exploitable habit. She catalogued them all. "Chen," Davis called out suddenly. "You're up." Maya stood. Her heart rate increased slightly, but her expression remained perfectly calm. "Your opponent," Davis continued, and Maya could swear she saw something like anticipation in his eyes. "Reed." The gymnasium went quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then the laughter started. "Oh man," someone said loudly. "She's gonna die." "Pixie versus the linebacker. This should last about 5 seconds. Someone call medical, they're gonna need a stretcher." Reed was grinning from ear to ear as he walked to center mat. He towered over Maya by more than a foot. His arms were bigger than her thighs. He outweighed her by at least 75 pounds. "Hey, Pixie," he said quietly as they faced each other. "Don't worry. I'll make it quick. Wouldn't want to embarrass you too much." Maya said nothing. She simply watched him, watching the way his feet were positioned, watching the slight tension in his shoulders, watching the overconfidence that practically radiated off his body. Corporal Bradley stepped between them. "Touch gloves and fight." Reed tapped Maya's gloves dismissively, like he was humoring a child. Maya tapped back, her eyes never leaving his. The whistle blew. Reed did exactly what Maya knew he would do. He charged forward with a wild overhand right, putting every ounce of his 210 pounds behind the punch. He expected to end the fight with one blow, just like he had ended Patterson. But Maya wasn't there anymore. She had slipped to her left with timing so precise it looked like she had known the punch was coming before Reed had even thrown it. His massive fist whistled past her ear, hitting nothing but air. The momentum of his missed swing carried him forward, off balance, exposed. Time seemed to slow down. Maya's right hand shot upward in a compact uppercut that caught Reed directly under the chin. The punch wasn't thrown with devastating power. It didn't need to be. It was timed perfectly, landing at the exact moment when Reed's jaw was most vulnerable. His head snapped back. Before he could recover, Maya was already moving. A left hook crashed into his liver, sending waves of nauseating pain through his core. He bent forward instinctively, trying to protect himself. Her knee came up to meet his descending face. The impact echoed through the silent gymnasium like a gunshot. Reed's eyes rolled back. His legs went boneless. He collapsed to the mat like a building being demolished, hitting the ground with a heavy thud that made several recruits gasp out loud. Total elapsed time 7 seconds. The silence was absolute. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Every person in that gymnasium was frozen, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Maya stood over Reed's unconscious body, her hands still raised in fighting position. Her breathing was steady. Her expression hadn't changed at all. She looked like someone who had just completed a routine training exercise, not someone who had just knocked out a man nearly twice her size. "What the hell?" someone whispered. Corporal Bradley rushed forward to check on Reed. The big man was already starting to stir, groaning and blinking in confusion. Bradley helped him sit up, but Reed clearly had no idea where he was or what had happened. "Match," Bradley announced, his voice slightly unsteady. "Winner Chen." Still, no one moved. Still, no one spoke. The recruits stared at Maya like she had just performed an impossible magic trick. The training staff exchanged glances that mixed shock with something that looked almost like admiration. Davis broke the silence. "Chen, return to formation." Maya lowered her hands and walked back to her spot. As she passed through the rows of stunned recruits, she kept her eyes forward. She didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate. She simply took her seat and waited. Torres was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "Did that just happen?" "I saw it," Williams answered. "I still don't believe it. She killed him. She actually killed him. He's not dead, but yeah, that was impossible. That's what it was. Impossible." Reed was helped to the sidelines, still dazed and struggling to understand what had occurred. His face was already starting to swell where Maya's knee had connected. He looked at her once, and for the first time since training began, there was no arrogance in his eyes. Only fear. Davis called out the next pairing, but nobody was paying attention to the other matches anymore. All eyes kept drifting back to Maya, sitting quietly in her spot, her face revealing nothing. The recruits who had been joking about her just minutes earlier were now silent. The men who had called her Pixie were suddenly very interested in looking anywhere but at her. The entire energy of the gymnasium had shifted in those 7 seconds, and Maya knew this was only the beginning. "Torres," Davis announced after a few more matches. "Center mat, you're fighting Chen." Torres walked to the mat with considerably less confidence than Reed had shown. He had watched what happened. He had seen one of the biggest, strongest men in the platoon get demolished in seconds. He was a wrestler, not a striker, but he wasn't stupid enough to think that would save him. "Look," he said quietly as they faced each other. "I know I said some things before, about you not belonging here. I was wrong. Okay?" Maya tilted her head slightly. "Are you asking me to go easy on you? I'm asking you not to kill me." "Then don't give me a reason to." The whistle blew. Torres didn't charge like Reed had. He was smarter than that. He circled carefully, his hands extended, looking for an opportunity to grab Maya and take the fight to the ground, where his wrestling skills would give him an advantage. Maya let him circle. She appeared to be waiting defensive, maybe even uncertain. It was exactly the opening Torres needed. He shot forward for a double-leg takedown. It was his signature move, the technique he had used to win dozens of wrestling matches in college. His form was textbook. Low-level change, head to the side, driving through with his powerful legs. Against most opponents, it would have been unstoppable. Maya sprawled. The move was so fast it looked like a video glitch. One moment she was standing directly in Torres's path. The next moment her legs had shot backward and her hips had dropped low, leaving Torres grasping at empty air where her legs should have been. At the same time, her forearm came down hard across the back of his neck. The blow drove his face toward the mat and killed his forward momentum completely. Torres found himself flat on his stomach with Maya's full weight pressing down on his back. Before he could scramble to his feet, before he could even understand what had gone wrong with his takedown, he felt arms wrapping around his neck. Rear naked choke, one arm across the throat, the other hand gripping the bicep. Airway completely cut off. Torres struggled. He tried to stand, but Maya rode him like a backpack, her legs wrapped around his waist. Her arms locked tight around his throat. He tried to roll, but she rolled with him, never losing position. His face turned red. His struggles became more frantic, then weaker. His hands, which had been clawing at Maya's arms, started to drop. "Tap," Maya said calmly. "Or sleep." Torres tapped, hard, repeatedly, desperately. Maya released the choke instantly, pushing away from him and rising to her feet in one smooth motion. Torres collapsed onto his back, gasping for air, staring at the ceiling with the same bewildered expression Reed had worn. Total elapsed time, 18 seconds. "Winner Chen," Bradley announced, his voice now clearly shaken. The gymnasium was buzzing with whispered conversations. 2 down. 2 of the platoon's best fighters, both defeated in less than 30 seconds combined. "This can't be real," someone muttered. "Where did she learn to do that? She was sandbagging. This whole time she was sandbagging." Holy crap. Holy freaking crap. Maya returned to formation. Her breathing was still steady. She hadn't even broken a sweat. Davis was watching her with an expression that had evolved from skepticism to intense curiosity. He looked down at his clipboard, then back at Maya, then down at the clipboard again. "Jackson," he called out, "you're up against Miller." The matches continued, but the atmosphere had completely changed. Every recruit was now hyper-aware of Maya's presence. The jokes had stopped entirely. The whispered conversations were all about her, about what she had done, about what else she might be capable of. When Davis called her name again, the gymnasium went silent immediately. Chen versus Williams. Williams was 6'5" and 220 pounds. He had dominated his previous matches with powerful boxing combinations that his opponents couldn't answer. He walked to the mat, slowly, deliberately, his expression carefully neutral. "I'm not going to underestimate you," he said as they faced each other. "Not after what I just saw." "Smart," Maya replied. "But I'm not Reed. I'm not Torres. I know how to fight." "We'll see." The whistle blew. Williams didn't charge. He didn't shoot for a takedown. He maintained his distance, hands up, moving carefully on his toes. He threw a testing jab, not committing to anything, just measuring distance. Maya slipped it easily. Another jab, another slip. Williams was probing, trying to figure out her patterns, looking for an opening. It was actually good tactics. He had learned from the others' mistakes. He was being patient, methodical, intelligent. But patience wouldn't save him. Maya suddenly stepped forward into his reach, closing the distance before he could reset. At close range, his height advantage disappeared. His long arms became liabilities rather than assets. She attacked his legs with a vicious low kick that swept his front foot from under him. William stumbled, his balance broken for just a moment. That moment was all Maya needed. She grabbed his extended arm as he tried to regain his footing. A quick duck under shoulder against his chest, and then she used his own momentum against him. A judo throw that lifted his massive body off the mat and sent him crashing down onto his back with brutal force. Williams hit the ground hard. The impact drove the air from his lungs. Before he could process what had happened, Maya was on top of him, controlling his arm, extending his elbow beyond its natural range. Armbar. Locked tight. No escape. Tap or break, Maya said, her voice completely calm. Your choice. Williams tapped immediately. He wasn't stupid enough to let his arm get broken for pride. Maya released him and stood up. 3 opponents. 3 victories. Total time maybe a minute combined. The gymnasium was no longer just buzzing. People were openly talking now, their voices carrying across the space, despite efforts to keep them down. She's a monster. Where did she come from? Chicago? She said Chicago. What the hell do they teach kids in Chicago? Davis stood up from his chair. His expression had shifted again from curiosity to something that looked almost like respect. He made a note on his clipboard, then looked directly at Maya. Chen, he said, his voice carrying easily through the gymnasium. Outstanding performance. Maya nodded once, but said nothing. You've got 3 more matches today, Davis continued. Carter, Anderson, and Mitchell, unless you need a break. No break necessary, sir. I didn't think so. Davis turned to address the gymnasium. Let this be a lesson to every one of you. Size, strength, reach. None of it means anything if you can't use it effectively. Chen just demonstrated what real martial arts training looks like. Learn from it. He sat back down and consulted his clipboard. Carter, center mat. Let's see if you've been paying attention. Carter walked to the mat, with the resigned expression of a man walking to his own execution. He had watched 3 of his squad mates get dismantled in seconds. He had no illusions about what was about to happen. Just don't hurt me too bad, he said quietly. I've got a wife and kids back home. Maya almost smiled. Almost. I'll be gentle. She wasn't lying. The match with Carter lasted slightly longer than the others, almost 40 seconds, but only because Maya deliberately drew it out. She let him throw a few punches, let him think he might have a chance, then took him down with a triangle choke that put him to sleep before he even had time to tap. Anderson lasted 30 seconds. Mitchell lasted even less. 6 Marines, 6 victories. Total combined time, less than 4 minutes. When the final match ended, Maya stood in the center of the mat, surrounded by the groaning, confused, and thoroughly defeated bodies of men who had spent weeks laughing at her, mocking her, calling her pixie, and betting on how quickly she would fail. She wasn't laughing now. Neither were they. Davis walked to center mat. The entire training staff had risen from their seats. Every recruit in the gymnasium was staring at Maya with expressions ranging from awe to terror. Recruits, Davis announced, his voice echoing through the sudden silence. What you just witnessed is the difference between a fighter and a warrior, between someone who relies on size and someone who has mastered technique, between arrogance and competence. He turned to look directly at Maya. Chen, where did you learn to fight like that? Maya met his eyes. My grandmother, sir. She was a martial artist in Vietnam. She taught me that survival isn't about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about never giving up, ever. Your grandmother taught you well. Yes, sir, she did. Davis nodded slowly. There was respect in his expression now. Real respect earned through action, rather than given through courtesy. "Outstanding performance," he said. "Return to formation." As Maya walked back to her spot, she passed Reed, who was sitting against the wall with an ice pack pressed to his swollen face. Their eyes met briefly. "How?" Reed asked, his voice hoarse. "How did you do that?" Maya paused. She thought about all the insults, all the jokes, all the times he had called her Pixie, and bet against her, and made her life miserable for weeks. Then she thought about what her grandmother had taught her about victory. "You spent 5 weeks telling me I didn't belong here," Maya said quietly. "You never once stopped to wonder if maybe you were wrong. That's how." She walked away before he could respond. The evaluation continued for another hour, but it was anticlimactic. Nobody else could match what Maya had demonstrated. The remaining matches seemed almost amateurish compared to the precision and efficiency she had displayed. When the session finally ended, the platoon filed out of the gymnasium in stunned silence. The hierarchy that had existed for 5 weeks had been completely destroyed in less than an hour. The recruit they had dismissed as the weakest link had just proven herself to be the most dangerous person in the entire company. Staff Sergeant Kim caught Maya's arm as she was leaving. They stepped aside away from the other recruits. "I knew you were hiding something," Kim said quietly, "but I didn't expect that. My grandmother always said to wait for the right moment. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. She passed away 3 months before I shipped out." Kim's expression softened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She wanted me to be here. She wanted me to show people what a small woman could do. I think she would have enjoyed today. I think she would have too." Kim released Maya's arm. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be interesting." Maya nodded and walked toward the barracks. As she moved through the depot, she noticed recruits from other platoons pointing at her, whispering. Word was already spreading. The Pixie had become something else entirely, and everyone was finally starting to understand what they had been wrong about from the very beginning. The barracks felt different that night. Maya walked through the door, and every conversation stopped. 46 pairs of eyes followed her as she made her way to her bunk. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The silence was heavier than any insult had ever been. Maya sat down on her bed and began unlacing her boots. She could feel them watching, waiting, trying to figure out who she really was and how they had missed it for 5 weeks. Reed was the first to break the silence. He stood up from his bunk, his face still swollen and bruised, and walked slowly toward Maya. The other recruits tensed, uncertain what was about to happen. He stopped 3 feet from her bed. "I owe you an apology," Reed said. His voice was different now, quieter, humbled. "I spent weeks making your life miserable. I called you names. I bet against you. I treated you like you didn't belong here." Maya looked up at him but said nothing. "I was wrong," Reed continued. "I was so wrong it's embarrassing. And I'm sorry. Genuinely sorry." The barracks was absolutely silent. Nobody had expected this. Reed was supposed to be angry, defensive, making excuses. Instead, he was standing there with his pride shattered, offering a sincere apology to the woman who had knocked him unconscious in front of everyone. "Apology accepted," Maya said simply. "That's it, just like that. You made a mistake. You admitted it. That takes courage. What else is there to say?" Reed stared at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. "You're something else, Chen. You know that, so I've been told." Reed returned to his bunk, and gradually the normal sounds of the barracks resumed. But the dynamic had permanently shifted. Maya was no longer the Pixie. She wasn't even just another recruit anymore. She had become something they didn't have a word for yet. Torres approached her next, moving hesitantly, like he was approaching a wild animal. "Hey, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Oh, that choke you used on me. The rear naked. Where did you learn to lock it in like that? I've been doing BJJ for 3 years and I've never felt anything that tight." "My grandmother taught me a Vietnamese variation. It's about the angle of the forearm, not just the squeeze." "Would you show me sometime?" Maya considered this. Torres had been one of her harshest critics. He had told her she didn't belong here. He had suggested she should quit before she got hurt. But he was also standing here now, humble and curious, asking her to teach him something. "Tomorrow," she said. "During free time, I'll show you." Torres nodded, something like gratitude flickering across his face. "Thanks, I really appreciate it." One by one, over the next hour, other recruits approached Maya's bunk. Some offered apologies. Some asked questions about her fighting techniques. Some just wanted to know her story, the real story, not the assumptions they had made based on her size. Maya answered their questions carefully. She didn't reveal everything. She didn't talk about the underground fighting or the blood money she had earned in Chicago parking lots. But she told them about her grandmother, about the traditional martial arts passed down through generations, about growing up on the South Side, where survival was never guaranteed. "My parents were killed when I was 8, she said at one point when someone asked why she seemed so much tougher than everyone else. "Shot in a gang crossfire, wrong place, wrong time. My grandmother raised me after that. She was the strongest person I've ever known." The barracks went quiet again. "She died 3 months ago," Maya continued. "Right before I shipped out. She wanted me to join the Marines. She wanted me to show people what a small woman could do. Today was for her." Jackson, the tall woman from Georgia, who had distanced herself from Maya to protect her own reputation, was crying silently on her bunk. She wiped her eyes and walked over. "I'm sorry I abandoned you," Jackson said, her voice thick with emotion. "When things got hard, I should have stood by you. Instead, I protected myself. I'm ashamed of that." "You did what you had to do to survive," Maya replied. "I understand that better than anyone." "That doesn't make it right." "No, but it makes you human. We're all just trying to survive, Jackson. I don't hold it against you." Jackson sat down beside Maya on the bunk. "Can we start over? I'd like to actually get to know you. The real you." "I'd like that too." The night stretched on, and for the first time since arriving at San Diego, Maya felt like she belonged somewhere. Not because she had proven herself in combat, but because she had finally let people see who she really was. The mask she had worn for 5 weeks was gone. But she knew tomorrow would bring new challenges. Word of her performance had spread beyond her platoon. The entire training depot was talking about the small recruit who had destroyed 6 Marines in minutes. Some would be impressed. Others would be threatened. And threatened people, Maya knew from experience, could be dangerous. The next morning started like any other with physical training at 0500. But as Maya's platoon assembled for their morning run, she noticed something different. Recruits from other platoons were watching from a distance, pointing and whispering. "That's her," she heard someone say. "That's the one. She doesn't look like much." Neither did the 6 guys she put in the hospital. They weren't hospitalized. Close enough. Davis pushed the platoon harder than usual that morning, but Maya kept pace with everyone else. She was done hiding her abilities. There was no point anymore. The secret was out. After physical training, Corporal Bradley pulled Maya aside. His demeanor had changed completely. The contempt that had been so obvious before was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "Chen," he said, "the colonel wants to see you." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "The colonel, sir." "Colonel Harrison, base commander. He heard about your performance yesterday and requested a personal meeting. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, sir? Bradley actually smiled. It was the first time Maya had ever seen him do that. Honestly, I have no idea, but when the colonel asks to see you, you go. Report to the administration building at 0800. Yes, sir. Maya spent the next hour wondering what this meeting could mean. Colonel Harrison was a legend in the Marine Corps. 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, multiple decorations for valor. He didn't meet with recruits. Ever. The fact that he wanted to see her personally was either very good or very bad. At precisely 0800, Maya knocked on the colonel's office door. Enter. But Colonel Harrison was smaller than she expected, maybe 5'10" with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He was sitting behind a desk covered with papers and photographs, and he didn't stand when Maya entered. Recruit Chen, at ease, sit down. Maya sat in the chair across from his desk, her posture perfect, her expression neutral. I've been reviewing footage from yesterday's evaluation, Harrison said without preamble. I've also been reading your background file. You're from Chicago, South Side. Yes, sir. Your parents were killed when you were 8. You were raised by your grandmother, who apparently trained you in traditional Vietnamese martial arts. You also studied Taekwondo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, competed in tournaments, never lost. That's correct, sir. Harrison leaned forward. What your file doesn't mention is the underground fighting circuit, the one that operates in warehouse districts and abandoned factories, the one where young fighters earn cash by beating people unconscious in front of paying crowds. Maya's blood ran cold. How did he know about that? Nothing to say, Harrison asked. Sir, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Don't insult my intelligence, Chen. Harrison's voice hardened. I know about the circuit. I know you fought in it for 3 years. I know you never lost a single match. What I don't know is why. Maya was silent for a long moment. Her mind raced through possibilities. Denial was pointless. He clearly had information from somewhere, but admitting to underground fighting could end her Marine Corps career before it even started. My grandmother was sick, she finally said. Diabetes, kidney problems, heart condition. The medical bills were destroying us. I did what I had to do to help her. You could have gotten a regular job. I was 15 when I started, sir. Nobody was going to hire a 15-year-old for a job that paid well enough to cover what we needed. The fighting was the only option that made sense. Harrison studied her for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. Maya felt like she was being evaluated in a way that went far deeper than any physical test. Do you know why I asked to see you? He finally said. No, sir. Because in 30 years of military service, I've seen exactly 3 people fight the way you did yesterday. 3. One of them became a Navy SEAL. One of them died in Fallujah, saving 6 of his squad mates. The 3rd one is sitting in front of me right now. Maya didn't know how to respond to that. The Marine Corps is always looking for exceptional people, Harrison continued. People who can do things that others can't. People who can be assets in situations where normal rules don't apply. Your combat skills are extraordinary, but what impressed me most wasn't your technique, sir. It was your patience. You spent 5 weeks being insulted, dismissed, and underestimated. You let them laugh at you. You let them call you names. You deliberately hid your abilities and waited for the perfect moment to reveal them. That kind of strategic thinking is rare, rarer than fighting skill. Harrison stood up and walked to the window. I'm not going to report your involvement in underground fighting. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist. You were protecting your family. I respect that. Thank you, sir. But I am going to do something else. He turned to face her. When you complete basic training, I'm recommending you for reconnaissance selection. It's the first step towards special operations. Most recruits aren't even eligible to apply until they've served for at least a year. I'm making an exception. Maya felt her heart stop. Reconnaissance was the elite of the elite. The pathway to force recon, to special operations, to the most challenging and important missions the Marine Corps had to offer. Sir, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Earn it. The recommendation gets you in the door. What you do once you're there is up to you. Harrison returned to his desk and sat down. Dismissed, Chen. Report back to your platoon. Maya stood saluted and walked to the door. But before she left, Harrison spoke again. Chen. Sir, your grandmother. She would be proud of what you did yesterday, and she would be proud of what you're going to become. Maya's throat tightened. Thank you, sir. That means more than you know. She walked out of the office, with her head spinning. Reconnaissance selection. A recommendation from a base commander. Her career trajectory had just changed completely in the span of a single conversation. But as she made her way back to the training area, she noticed something that made her pause. A group of male recruits from another platoon was blocking her path. There were 6 of them, all large, all watching her with expressions that were anything but friendly. So you're the one, the biggest one said. He had sergeant stripes on his uniform. The little girl who thinks she can fight. I don't think anything, Maya replied calmly. I know. Big words from someone who caught a few guys off guard. That's all you did, you know. You surprised them. Wouldn't work a second time. You want to find out? The sergeant laughed, but there was no humor in it. What I want is for you to understand something. There's a natural order in the Marines. Men lead. Women support. What you did yesterday upset that order. Some of us don't appreciate that. Then some of you need to evolve. The sergeant's face darkened. Watch yourself, recruit. You might have impressed the brass with your little show, but you haven't impressed me. And accidents happen in training. All the time. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Welcome to the real Marine Corps. He pushed past her, his shoulder hitting hers hard enough to make her stumble. The other recruits followed, each one, giving her looks that promised future trouble. Maya watched them go, her mind already analyzing the situation. 6 potential enemies. The biggest one was the leader, probably from a different platoon, possibly with connections that could make her life difficult. They resented what she had done, not because of how she had done it, but because of who she was. A woman. A small woman. Someone who had challenged their assumptions about strength and capability. This wasn't over. She had known from the beginning that changing minds was harder than winning fights. The men she had defeated yesterday were humbled and learning. But there would always be others who refused to accept what they had witnessed. Maya continued to her platoon's training area, but she filed the encounter away in her memory. Names to learn, patterns to observe, threats to neutralize. Her grandmother had taught her that enemies revealed themselves through their actions. These men had just revealed themselves, and Maya Chen never forgot an enemy. The rest of the day proceeded normally, but Maya sensed a new tension in the air. Word of her meeting with Colonel Harrison had spread, and speculation was running wild. Some recruits assumed she was being disciplined. Others thought she was being transferred. A few had correctly guessed that she was being recognized for exceptional performance. During hand-to-hand training that afternoon, she noticed the 6 recruits from the hostile platoon watching from a distance. They made no moves toward her, but their presence was clearly intentional. Intimidation. Surveillance. Maya ignored them and focused on her training. She was partnered with Reed, who had apparently decided to take his loss as an opportunity to learn. Show me that uppercut again, Reed said. Reed. The one that put my lights out. I want to understand how you generated that much power from such a short distance. Maya demonstrated the technique, slowly breaking it down into components. It's not about arm strength. It's about hip rotation and timing. Watch. She threw the uppercut at quarter speed, emphasizing the twist of her hips and the whip-like motion of her arm. I was loading up too much, Reed realized. Telegraphing everything. Exactly. Power comes from technique, not muscle. The technique is always faster than the muscle. My football coaches would have a heart attack hearing you say that. Your football coaches taught you to hit people who were expecting to be hit. Fighting is different. You're trying to hit people who are trying not to be hit. Speed and surprise matter more than raw force. They practiced together for the next hour, with Maya correcting Reed's form and teaching him refinements he had never learned from traditional training. By the end of the session, his technique had already improved noticeably. You're a good teacher, Reed said as they finished up. Better than most of the instructors here. My grandmother was the good teacher. I'm just passing on what she gave me. She sounds like an amazing woman. She was. The best person I ever knew. That night, Maya lay in her bunk and thought about everything that had happened. The evaluation. The meeting with Colonel Harrison. The confrontation with the hostile recruits. The tentative friendships forming with people who had been her enemies just days before. Her grandmother had told her that becoming a warrior was a journey, not a destination. There would always be new challenges, new enemies, new opportunities to prove herself. The key was to face each one with the same determination and focus. Maya closed her eyes and let herself drift toward sleep. Tomorrow would bring new tests. She would be ready for all of them. But somewhere in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that the 6 recruits she had encountered weren't just making idle threats. Something was coming. Something that would test her in ways even yesterday's evaluation hadn't. She slept lightly that night, part of her always alert, always watching. In the south side of Chicago, you learned to sleep with one eye open. Some habits never died. 3 days passed without incident. Maya trained with her platoon taught techniques to recruits who asked and kept her eyes open for the 6 men who had threatened her. They watched from a distance, but made no moves. Waiting. Planning. Maya knew the pattern. She had seen it before in Chicago. Predators circled their prey, looking for the perfect moment to strike. The longer they waited, the more dangerous the eventual attack would be. On the 4th night, it happened. Maya was walking back from the latrine at 0200 when shadows detached from the darkness around her. 6 of them moving in coordinated formation, cutting off her escape routes with military precision. Told you accidents happen in training, the sergeant said. His name was Crawford, she had learned, a 3rd-generation Marine with a family legacy to protect. The idea of a small Asian woman outperforming men like him was apparently more than his ego could handle. This isn't training, Maya replied calmly. This is 6 men attacking 1 woman in the middle of the night. That's called cowardice. Call it whatever you want. When we're done, you'll be too injured to continue. Medical discharge. Happens all the time. And if I report this, Crawford laughed. Report what you fell during a night exercise. Tragic accident. Very unfortunate. 6 witnesses will confirm exactly what happened. Maya assessed her situation in milliseconds. 6 opponents. Limited space. No witnesses except the attackers themselves. They were big, but they were overconfident. They thought numbers guaranteed victory. They were wrong. Last chance, Maya said. Walk away now, and this doesn't have to happen. You hear that, boys? The little girl is giving us a chance to walk away. Crawford cracked his knuckles. I'm going to enjoy this. He rushed forward first, just like Reed had done in the gymnasium. But Crawford was faster, more experienced. His punch was aimed at her solar plexus, designed to incapacitate rather than knock out. Maya wasn't there. She had already moved sliding sideways and letting Crawford's momentum carry him past her. Her elbow came up hard into his kidney as he passed. He grunted in pain and stumbled. The others attacked simultaneously. Maya became water. She flowed between their strikes, never where they expected her to be, always just out of reach. A fist whistled past her ear. A kick missed her ribs by inches. She ducked, weaved, and waited for her openings. The first man went down when she drove her thumb into the nerve cluster behind his ear. He dropped instantly unconscious before he hit the ground. The second fell when she caught his arm during a wild swing and hyperextended his elbow with a standing arm bar. The crack was audible. He screamed and collapsed, clutching his damaged joint. 3 left, plus Crawford, who was still recovering from the kidney shot. "Get her!" Crawford shouted. All at once, they rushed her together. A mistake. In close quarters, numbers became a liability. They couldn't swing without hitting each other. They couldn't coordinate without communication. Maya exploited every weakness. She grabbed one man's shirt collar and used his body as a shield against another's punch. While they untangled themselves, she kicked out the third man's knee. He went down, howling. She spun and delivered a palm strike to the fourth man's nose. Blood exploded across his face, and he staggered backward, blinded by pain. That left Crawford. He had recovered now and was circling her carefully. Unlike his men, he wasn't rushing in blindly. He had seen what she could do. He was afraid. "You're dead," he said. His voice was shaking. "I don't care what happens to me. You're dead. Then come kill me." Crawford attacked with more skill than the others. He threw combinations that were actually technically sound. He used his footwork. He tried to cut off angles. But he was fighting angry, and angry fighters made mistakes. Maya let him push her backward, giving ground deliberately, making him think he was winning. His confidence grew. His attacks became more aggressive, more committed, more predictable. When he threw a heavy right cross, Maya stepped inside the punch. Her forehead slammed into his nose with sickening force. Crawford's head snapped back. Blood poured from his shattered nose. Before he could recover, Maya had swept his legs and put him on the ground. She mounted him, her knees pinning his arms, her face inches from his. "You wanted to know what happens when you threaten me," she whispered. "This is what happens." She could have killed him. One strike to the throat, one elbow to the temple. A dozen different ways to end his life right there on the ground. He knew it. She could see the terror in his eyes. Instead, she stood up and stepped back. "Crawl back to your barracks," she said. "Tell anyone who asks that you fell down the stairs, and if you ever come near me again, I won't be so merciful." Crawford didn't move. He lay there bleeding and broken, surrounded by his equally damaged men. "Did you hear me?" Maya asked. "Yes," Crawford whispered. "I heard you." "Good." Maya walked away without looking back. Her hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, from adrenaline. From the controlled release of violence she had been holding back for weeks. She made it back to her bunk and lay down in the darkness. Her heart was pounding. Her mind was racing. But she forced herself to breathe slowly, to calm down, to process what had just happened. 6 men, trained Marines. They had attacked her in the dark with the intention of ending her career, and she had destroyed them in less than 2 minutes. But this wasn't over. Crawford would tell his story, whatever version he chose to tell. There would be investigations, questions, consequences. Maya closed her eyes and thought about her grandmother. "When you fight," Lynn had told her once, "you must be willing to accept the consequences of victory. Sometimes winning costs more than losing. But if you are not willing to pay that price, You should never have started fighting in the first place." Maya was willing to pay any price. She always had been. The next morning, she was summoned to Staff Sergeant Kim's office. Kim was waiting with a file folder on her desk, and an expression that was impossible to read. "Sit down, Chen." Maya sat. "I received a report this morning," Kim said. 6 recruits from 3rd Platoon were found injured near the latrines. Broken arm, broken nose, multiple contusions. One of them is still unconscious. That's unfortunate. They claim they were attacked by an unknown assailant. Did they describe this assailant? They say they couldn't see clearly in the dark. Maya said nothing. Kim leaned forward. "I know what happened, Chen. I know Crawford has been targeting you since the evaluation. I know he threatened you. And I know that 6 men don't get beaten unconscious by an unknown assailant in the middle of a military base. What are you going to do about it? That depends on what you tell me." Maya considered her options. Lying would be pointless. Kim already knew the truth. Telling the full truth could lead to charges against Crawford and his men, but it could also raise questions about her own actions. "They attacked me," Maya said finally. 6 of them, in the dark. They said they were going to injure me badly enough to force a medical discharge. They said it would be reported as a training accident. "And you defended yourself?" "Yes." Kim nodded slowly. "Here's what's going to happen. Crawford and his men are going to maintain their story about an unknown attacker. The investigation will find nothing conclusive. And you are going to pretend this conversation never happened." "Why would I do that?" "Because Colonel Harrison has already been informed, not officially but through channels that don't leave paper trails. He knows what Crawford tried to do. He knows how you handled it, and he's not going to let it slide." "What does that mean?" "It means Crawford's career is over. He just doesn't know it yet. His next evaluation will be devastating. His promotion will be denied. He'll be transferred to a posting so miserable he'll resign within a year. The same will happen to every man who was with him. That's not justice. That's bureaucratic revenge. Welcome to the military, Chen. Sometimes justice happens in the shadows instead of the courtroom. The important thing is that it happens." Kim closed the file folder. "You're dismissed. And Chen, yes. Next time, don't leave them conscious. Unconscious men can't coordinate their stories." Maya walked out of Kim's office with a new understanding of how the military really worked. Rules existed, but so did ways around those rules. Power flowed through official channels and unofficial ones. People who threatened the wrong person learned that consequences could come from directions they never expected. She thought about Crawford lying in the medical bay with his broken nose. He had thought his family name and his connections would protect him. He had thought 6 against 1 was a guaranteed victory. He had been wrong on both counts. The rest of the day passed in a strange kind of peace. Word had apparently spread about what happened, though the official story remained vague. Recruits from other platoons looked at Maya differently now. Not with hostility, but with something deeper. Wariness. Respect. Fear. She had proven herself in the gymnasium with sanctioned combat. Now she had proven herself in the shadows with unsanctioned violence. Both tests mattered. Both results had been decisive. During afternoon training, Reed pulled her aside. "I heard about last night," he said quietly. "What did you hear?" "That Crawford and his boys got educated. That they picked a fight with the wrong person." "I don't know what you're talking about," Reed smiled. "Sure you don't. But here's the thing. You've got friends now. Real ones. If anyone else tries what Crawford tried, they're not just dealing with you. They're dealing with all of us." "You don't have to do that." "Yeah, we do. You've taught us more in the last few days than most of these instructors have taught us in weeks. You've treated us with respect even after we treated you like garbage. The least we can do is have your back." Maya felt something loosen in her chest, something she had been carrying alone for a long time. "Thank you," she said. "That means a lot." "Don't mention it. Seriously, don't mention it. I've got a reputation to protect." Reed grinned and walked back to the training area. That evening, Maya received another summons, this time to Colonel Harrison's office. She arrived to find Harrison standing at his window, looking out at the parade ground. He didn't turn around when she entered. "Close the door, Chen." Maya closed it and stood at attention. "I heard about your encounter with Sergeant Crawford," Harrison said, still facing the window. "Impressive work. 6 trained men, all neutralized in under 2 minutes. No permanent damage except to Crawford's arm and his pride." "Thank you, sir." "I also heard that you showed restraint. You could have killed any of them. You chose not to. Killing them wasn't necessary. They needed to learn a lesson, not die." Harrison finally turned around. His expression was thoughtful. "That kind of judgment is rare. Most people, when attacked by 6 opponents, would panic. They would use maximum force because they were afraid. You used minimum force because you were in complete control. That's the difference between a fighter and a warrior. My grandmother taught me that. Your grandmother taught you many things, including when to show mercy." Harrison walked to his desk and picked up a piece of paper. "I'm accelerating your path. Instead of waiting until graduation to submit your reconnaissance selection packet, I'm submitting it now. You'll begin preliminary evaluation next week, concurrent with the final stages of basic training." Maya's heart skipped. "Sir, that's highly irregular." "Yes, it is. I'm highly irregular. The Marine Corps needs people like you, Chen. People who can handle situations that others can't. People who can be trusted to make the right call when everything is chaos. I'm not going to let bureaucracy slow down the process of getting you where you belong." "I don't know how to thank you, sir." "Don't thank me. Earn the opportunity. The reconnaissance selection process is brutal. Most candidates wash out. The fact that I recommended you doesn't guarantee anything. You'll still have to prove yourself every single day." "I understand, sir." "Good. Dismissed." Maya saluted and walked to the door, but before she reached it, Harrison spoke again. "Chen, one more thing." "Sir." "Crawford's father called me this morning. He wanted to know why his son was in the medical bay with a broken nose and a broken arm. I told him that his son had learned an important lesson about underestimating opponents. He didn't take it well." "I'm sorry if I've caused problems for you, sir." "You haven't. Crawford's father is a retired general with more ego than sense. He's been protected his whole life by his family name. His son inherited that entitlement without earning any of the respect that comes with it. They both need to learn that names don't matter in combat. Only capability matters." Harrison sat down at his desk. "You taught them that lesson." "I'm grateful." Maya nodded and left the office. As she walked back to the barracks, she thought about everything that had happened in the past week. The evaluation, the victory, the attack, the response, the acceleration of her career. Her grandmother had always said that life moved in cycles. Periods of waiting followed by periods of rapid change. The key was to be ready for both. Maya had spent 5 weeks waiting. Now everything was moving fast. She was ready. That night she wrote another letter to herself. Not about fear or determination this time. About gratitude. "I am grateful for my grandmother who gave me everything I needed to survive. I am grateful for the enemies who tested me and made me stronger. I am grateful for the friends who emerged from former adversaries. I am grateful for the opportunities that are opening before me. And I am grateful for the knowledge that no matter what comes next, I will face it with the same courage that has brought me this far." She folded the letter and placed it under her pillow next to the first one. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new opportunities to prove herself. Maya Chen was ready for all of them. The girl from the south side of Chicago had become something more. Something powerful. Something unstoppable. And she was just getting started. The final weeks of basic training passed in a blur of transformation. Maya moved through each day with a new kind of freedom. No longer hiding. No longer pretending. The mask was gone. The warrior had emerged. Her reconnaissance preliminary evaluation began on a Monday morning. 12 candidates from across the training depot. Maya was the only woman, the smallest person by far, and the only one who didn't look nervous. The evaluator was a force recon captain named Reyes. 20 years of special operations experience, eyes that had seen combat in places most people couldn't find on a map. He looked at Maya the way a predator looks at potential prey, assessing, calculating, searching for weakness. "Chen," he said during their first meeting, "Colonel Harrison speaks highly of you." "The colonel is generous with his praise, sir. He says you defeated 6 Marines in hand-to-hand combat, some in official evaluation, some in unofficial circumstances." "That's correct, sir. He also says you showed restraint when you didn't have to, that you chose mercy when violence would have been easier." "Also correct, sir." Reyes nodded slowly. "Restraint is harder than aggression. Anyone can hurt people. Knowing when not to hurt them requires something more, something rare." "My grandmother taught me that, sir." "Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman. She was the best person I ever knew." The preliminary evaluation was designed to identify candidates with potential for special operations. Physical tests pushed to extreme limits, psychological assessments probing for weakness, tactical scenarios requiring split-second decision-making. Maya excelled at all of them. The physical tests were brutal. Timed runs with heavy packs, obstacle courses designed to break spirits, combat swimming in freezing water. Some candidates quit on the first day. Others were eliminated on the second. By day 3, only 7 remained. Maya was not only surviving, she was leading. Her times were competitive with men 50 pounds heavier. Her technique in combat scenarios was flawless. Her mental resilience seemed unbreakable. "How are you doing this?" one of the male candidates asked during a brief rest period. His name was Martinez, a stocky Puerto Rican from New York who had been watching Maya with growing amazement. "Doing what? You're the smallest person here. You're carrying the same weight we are, running the same distances, swimming the same courses, and you're not even breathing hard." Maya smiled slightly. "I learned a long time ago that the body will do whatever the mind tells it to do. If you believe you can't do something, you can't. If you believe you can, you will." "That sounds like fortune cookie wisdom." "It's survival wisdom. Where I come from, you either learned to push past your limits, or you didn't make it." "Chicago right south side." "That's right." Martinez shook his head. "I grew up in the Bronx, thought I knew tough. But you're something else, Chen. Something I've never seen before." The 4th day brought a new challenge. Captain Reyes assembled the remaining candidates and announced a change in the evaluation protocol. "We've been testing you individually," he said. "Now we're going to test how you work together. You will complete a series of tactical scenarios as a team. Your performance will be judged both individually and collectively. If the team fails, everyone fails." He looked directly at Maya. "Chen, your team leader." The other candidates shifted uncomfortably. Being led by a woman was one thing. Being led by a 20-year-old woman who weighed less than most of them could bench press was another. "Problem with that assignment?" Reyes asked, noting their reactions. "No, sir." Several voices answered quickly. "Good, because I'm not asking for volunteers. I'm giving orders. Chen leads. Everyone else follows." Clear. Clear, sir. Maya stepped forward to address her team. 6 men, all larger than her, all more experienced in certain ways, but she had something they didn't. The ability to see patterns, to read people, to know exactly what each person needed to hear. I know some of you have doubts, she said. You're wondering why the smallest person here is leading the team. You're wondering if I can make the right calls under pressure. Nobody spoke, but she could see the truth in their eyes. Here's what I know. We either work together, or we all fail. I'm not asking you to trust me because of my size or my gender or anything else. I'm asking you to trust me because I'm going to get us through this, every single one of us, together. Martinez was the first to respond. I'm in. What do you need? The others followed one by one, reluctant at first, then more committed as they saw their teammates falling in line. Good, Maya said. Now here's how we're going to do this. The tactical scenarios were designed to simulate special operations missions, hostage rescue, high-value target extraction, ambush response. Each one required coordination communication and the ability to adapt when plans fell apart. Maya led her team through all of them. She assigned roles based on individual strengths. She positioned her biggest people where size mattered and her fastest people where speed was essential. She made decisions quickly, but not recklessly, always processing information before committing to action. When things went wrong, she adjusted instantly. During a simulated ambush scenario, 2 of her team members got killed in the first 30 seconds. Instead of panicking, Maya reorganized the remaining 4 into a new formation and completed the objective with time to spare. Impressive, Reyes noted afterward. Most teams fall apart when they take casualties. Your team stayed cohesive. We trained for contingencies, sir. If you only have one plan, you've already failed. Where did you learn that? The streets of Chicago, sir. Nothing ever goes according to plan. On the final day of evaluation, Reyes assembled all remaining candidates for individual interviews. Maya was called last. She sat across from Reyes in a small room. No desk between them. No barriers. Just 2 warriors assessing each other. Tell me about your grandmother, Reyes said. The question surprised Maya. Sir, you mention her constantly. She clearly shaped who you are. I want to understand that relationship. Maya was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. My grandmother raised me after my parents were killed. She was everything to me. Mother, father, teacher, friend. She taught me to fight, but more importantly, she taught me why to fight. Why is that? To protect people who can't protect themselves. To stand up against those who use strength to harm others. To never let anyone make you feel small just because they're bigger. Reyes nodded slowly. And when she died, I made her a promise. I told her I would become the warrior she always knew I could be. I told her I would show the world what a small woman from Chicago could accomplish. I told her I would never stop fighting no matter what obstacles stood in my way. Are you keeping that promise? Maya met his eyes. Every single day, sir. Reyes leaned back in his chair. I've been doing this for 20 years, Chen. I've evaluated hundreds of candidates. Some of them had better scores than you. Some of them were stronger, faster, more experienced. Maya waited. But I've never met anyone with more heart, more determination, more pure warrior spirit. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. You've been accepted into the reconnaissance training pipeline. Congratulations. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had hoped. She had worked. She had fought. But hearing the words made it real in a way that nothing else could. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. You earned this. Every step of the way. Reyes stood and extended his hand. Maya shook it. Your grandmother would be proud. I hope so, sir. I know so. Graduation day arrived 3 weeks later. Maya stood in formation with her platoon wearing the same uniform as everyone else, but carrying herself differently. The terrified recruit who had stepped off the bus months ago was gone. In her place stood a Marine. A warrior. A woman who had proven herself in ways that would be talked about for years to come. Her family had come from Chicago, aunts, uncles, cousins, people who had watched her struggle through poverty and violence and loss. People who had doubted whether she would ever find her way. They weren't doubting anymore. Colonel Harrison presided over the ceremony. When Maya's name was called to receive special recognition for combat excellence, the applause was thunderous. Her platoon cheered the loudest, led by Reed and Torres, and the other men who had once laughed at her. After the official ceremony, Maya found herself surrounded by family and fellow Marines. Everyone wanted to congratulate her. Everyone wanted to shake her hand, or hug her, or take pictures. But there was one conversation she needed to have first. She found Staff Sergeant Kim standing at the edge of the crowd, watching with an expression of quiet satisfaction. "Staff Sergeant," Maya said, "thank you for everything." Kim shook her head. "I didn't do anything except stay out of your way." "You did more than that. You saw me when no one else did. You knew I was hiding something and you let me reveal it on my own terms." "I recognized something in you," Kim admitted. "Something that reminded me of myself when I was your age. I was the only woman in my platoon too. I know what it's like to be underestimated, to have to prove yourself twice as hard just to be seen. How did you handle it?" "The same way you did. By being better than everyone who doubted me. By never giving them ammunition. By waiting for my moment and then seizing it completely." Maya smiled. "My grandmother said something similar once. She said the bamboo bends in the storm and survives while the oak stands rigid and breaks. Your grandmother was a wise woman. She was everything to me." Kim reached out and gripped Maya's shoulder. "She lives on in you, in everything you do, in every fight you win, in every person you teach, and every barrier you break. That's how we honor the people who made us, by becoming the best versions of what they taught us to be." Maya felt tears prickling at her eyes. She had been so strong for so long. But hearing those words spoken by someone who understood broke through the walls she had built. "I miss her every day," Maya whispered. "Yeah, I know. But she's not gone. She's right here." Kim touched Maya's heart. "She'll always be right here." Later that evening, Maya sat alone on a bench overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The depot was quiet, most people having gone to celebrate or rest. She pulled out the letters she had written to herself during training. The one from before the evaluation full of determination and promise. The one from after full of gratitude and resolve. She read them both, remembering who she had been at each moment. Remembering how far she had come. Then she pulled out a new piece of paper and began writing one final letter. "Grandmother, I did it. I graduated at the top of my class. I defeated everyone who underestimated me. I earned a place in reconnaissance training, something most Marines don't even dream of achieving. But more importantly, I found something I didn't expect to find. I found people who believe in me. People who respect me. People who have become friends despite starting as enemies. You taught me that strength isn't about size. It's about heart. It's about determination. It's about never giving up no matter how hard things get. I understand now why you pushed me so hard, why you made me train when I wanted to quit, why you never let me accept being small as a limitation. You weren't just teaching me to fight. You were teaching me to live. I promise to carry everything you gave me into whatever comes next. I will honor your memory with every victory and every act of mercy. I will teach others what you taught me. I will make sure that the lessons you learned survive beyond both of us. I love you. I miss you. And I will make you proud for the rest of my life. Your granddaughter, Maya. She folded the letter and held it against her chest. The wind was cool against her face. The sound of waves crashing against rocks filled the air. Tomorrow she would leave for reconnaissance training. Tomorrow new challenges would begin. Tomorrow she would have to prove herself all over again to people who had never seen her fight. But she wasn't afraid. She had never been afraid. Fear was just another obstacle, and Maya Chen had spent her entire life learning to overcome obstacles. Reed found her there an hour later. He sat down beside her without asking permission. "Figured you'd be out here," he said. "How'd you know?" "Because it's what I would do. Find somewhere quiet. Think about everything that happened. Try to make sense of it." Maya smiled. "Did you make sense of it?" "Not really. I still don't understand how you did what you did in that gymnasium. I've replayed it in my head 100 times and I still can't see how you moved so fast." It wasn't about speed. It was about timing. About knowing exactly where you were going to be before you got there. See, that's what I mean. That's impossible. It's not impossible. It just takes years of practice. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. "I'm going to miss you, Chen," Reed finally said. "You're the craziest person I've ever met, but also the best. I'm going to miss you too. All of you. You'll come back right after reconnaissance training. Maybe teach us some more of those techniques, if I can. But you don't need me to teach you anymore. You know what to do. You just have to believe you can do it." Reed laughed. "There's that fortune cookie wisdom again." "It worked for me." "Yeah, I guess it did." They shook hands, then hugged awkwardly, then laughed at the awkwardness. "Go be amazing," Reed said. "Show those special operations guys what real fighting looks like." "I will." Maya watched him walk away, then turned back to face the ocean. The last light of the sun was disappearing below the horizon. Stars were beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. She thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. Her parents' death. Her grandmother's love. The streets of Chicago, the underground fights, the decision to join the Marines, the weeks of hiding her abilities, the moment of revelation in the gymnasium, the attack in the darkness, the recognition from Colonel Harrison, the acceptance into reconnaissance training. Every step had led to the next. Every challenge had prepared her for the next challenge. Every victory had made the next victory possible. Her grandmother had told her once that warriors weren't born. They were forged through fire and hardship and the refusal to surrender. Maya Chen had been forged in the hottest fires imaginable, and she had emerged stronger than anyone could have predicted. She stood up and took one last look at the ocean. Tomorrow was coming. New battles, new enemies, new opportunities to prove herself. She was ready. The girl they had laughed at in drills had become the woman who crushed 6 Marines in minutes. The pixie had become the phoenix. The underestimated recruit had become a warrior whose story would be told for generations. And this was only the beginning. Maya Chen walked back toward the barracks with her head held high. The night surrounded her like a protective cloak. The stars overhead seemed to shine brighter than she remembered. Somewhere she knew her grandmother was watching, smiling, proud of the warrior she had created. The bamboo had bent in the storm, and the bamboo had survived.